I've invited a truth teller to talk about the 10 big lies about America, and that is author Michael Medved. And Michael has a new book called The 10 Big Lies About America. And welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm honored to be here. It's great to talk to you about this. This is, obviously, I'm passionate about this book, as I know you're passionate about everything.
And this
so
book.
It's great to talk about. Thank you.
But I want to go first and get into some history about Michael Medved and how your family came to America.
My journey begins, of course, with my grandparents,
Right.
all of whom were born abroad, like many Americans, most Americans. If you talk about the percentages of people who live here, the majority of Americans have at least one grandparent who was born abroad. All four of my grandparents born abroad. My mother's family was from Germany. My mother came from Germany when she was 9 in 1934 because of the rise of Hitler. And, and my father's family came from Ukraine. My grandfather was a barrel maker in Ukraine. And the pattern at that time, and it was true for immigrant groups from Sicily and from Poland and from Russia and all different kinds of immigrants, usually the guy would come over first. The husband would come over first, save up money, and then send steamship passage so that his wife and children could come along. And my grandfather came over, worked hard, saved money, saved up enough to pay for a wife and 6 children, and then sent for them to come over. He sent the money right at the opening of World War I, and they were actually in transit when they were stopped at the border, and that was 1914. My grandfather had been by himself for 4 years. It was 10 more years because of the war and the revolution in Russia and the Civil War in Russia, and during that 10 years, 5 of my grandmother's 6 children died. She finally got into the United States in 1924 with one surviving son. That was my uncle Moish. And she reunited with my grandfather, and then they were very relieved they'd come together. They'd been apart for 14 years. She had been through a tremendous amount, and she was terribly worried because she was vomiting, she was sick, she couldn't keep food down, she felt bloated, she was absolutely convinced that a tumor was growing inside her. And so she went to the doctor. The doctor said, "Congratulations, you're pregnant." And she said, "That's impossible because, I mean, I haven't been in the way of women." I mean, she was 49 years old.
Right.
And he says, "Your name is Sarah, isn't it?"
That's
like
yes,
Sarah in the Bible. And the child was my father, who was born in 1926. And my dad was, of course, the first American born in that family, native-born American, served his country in the Navy, and went on to a pretty amazing career. He was in the scientist-astronaut program as physics professor.
And he has a book also, right?
He does, thank you. And my father, in his 80s, did his first non-text book, which is called Hidden Light.
And that's about?
It's the subtitle is Science Secrets of the Bible. Look, the book is deeply technical, and people need to know a little bit about physics, and they need to know a little bit about scripture. But if you're interested in the two of them, it's a great book.
Your dad's obviously really bright, and your mother as well. And you're a genius, aren't you?
Some things I do well.
Okay.
There are other things I do terribly.
Well, you were 16 years old, and you got into Yale.
Right.
And it was on what kind of scholarship?
As a National Merit Scholar.
So what was it like to go to Yale at such a young age?
I'll tell you the funny thing, and people forget about this. I was the last class of all male Yale. In other words, there were no women. They used to say 1,000 male leaders. There'd be 1,000 people in each class, and when I started at Yale, I mean, I started in 1965, and when I started there, we had a coat and tie rule. You couldn't eat breakfast
without a coat and tie.
Without a coat and tie. It was hard for me because my parents had moved to California when I was 6, and I'd gone to high school in California, and Yale was very New Englandy, New York, particularly New York centric, and I felt more out of it being a public high school kid from California rather than because of my age. Because I was tall, and that was okay, and people wouldn't necessarily focus on the age.